especially given the geography and climate that we have in our Great Lakes state. And so as he noted in his project write-up, quote, I learned about pH, chemicals, water filtering, and pruning. We did experiments to chart spacing, insulation, and airflow for temperature controls. And then, his original greenhouse was 6 feet big. He wanted to raise money to make a larger greenhouse. He also needed to apply for a permit to do that. His mentors encouraged him to learn some GIS mapping so that he could visually illustrate the extent of the food desert that he and his peers lived in. And then when he wished for his greenhouse to also attend to environmental concerns, that's when he sought help in powering his greenhouse with solar panels. As he said in his report, quote, we had to figure out a way to power it without electricity. So we figured out how to use solar panels instead of how to plug it into the big old extendo plug from the club. So as we consider the community STEM and expert activist dialectics, we can see how Sincere's practices, along with the other 40 youth makers in this study, are rooted in community and reflect the deep and historicized knowledge and needs and challenges communities face. Youth's practices in STEM, their STEM practices now, make present what we call these nodes of criticality, which account for the, quote, loss and despair, but also the hope and the vision and the wisdom of lived lives and communities. And we can see in Sincere's case how these include, but are not limited to, those critical nodes of economics, geography, environment, social, and urban infrastructure. And as youth engaged in these rooted hybrid STEM practices, their in-the-moment actions served as pivots towards more consequential learning and a more rightful presence in STEM as they opened up new and meaningful opportunities for STEM learning in ways that bridge place and that bridge time. These pivot points included tools such as community knowledge, or even the tools of making solar panels in the greenhouse, to relationships such as Sincere's ties to his sister, his after-school educators, and the innovations themselves, such as the greenhouse. Sincere's greenhouse, along with the other examples I've shared, I think are all examples of youth efforts to transform the boundaries of participation in STEM in the moment and over time towards more rightful presence. And as Sincere noted, quote, I drew my greenhouse project blueprint and I drew my plants that grew inside the box. I'm a kid who dreams to be an architectural engineer and who likes building things. I can teach people how. I can use what I know to help people get the nutrition they need. And so this brings me to the third and last part of my talk, where I want to focus in on, so what could this mean in school settings? They've given you lots of examples from out of school, and what is it that we as teachers can do to promote more rightful presence among our students of color in our classroom settings? And so what I want to do is talk a little bit about a DR K-12 project, iEngineering, that we're in the 5th year of right now. And over the past 5 years, we've partnered in research, practice, partnerships that involve teachers, researchers, community educators, youth, and parents to design tools and materials that draw upon and expand how we might think about working towards a more rightful presence. And so this design approach that we've worked on that we think shows promise is what we call pedagogies of community ethnography. And so what do I mean by community ethnography pedagogies? Well, these are pedagogies that support teachers in not just noticing students' lived lives, but to notice them in new and different ways, shifting not only what we see, but where we see, and to see the scene new. And community ethnography pedagogies involve 3 things. They involve a stance that community knowledge and practice is a valuable part of disciplinary knowing, whether it's STEM or social studies or math or any other subject you might be teaching, that involves new roles for students and teachers as co-learners of that intersection between community wisdom and disciplinary knowledge. And it involves instructional moves that create spaces for eliciting and making visible the community wisdom, and which refract those forms of community wisdom into disciplinary learning, disrupting settled expectations for who and what it means to learn in STEM or any other discipline. And pedagogies of community ethnography explicitly tie to these undergirding ideals of rightful presence. First, they're built around critical engagement. We use community ethnography pedagogies to open up opportunities for youth to make visible and critique injustices in their communities and their current and future lives, and move from understanding those injustices to taking informed action on them as a part of learning in STEM. Second, community ethnography support youth and teachers in dialoguing around critical questions which should guide work in schools. Who is STEM for? Whose knowledge counts in STEM? Who owns STEM? And to what end? Across what spaces? And over what time? And so we've studied this approach ethnographically over 35 classrooms and 1,000 students in schools in Michigan and North Carolina over the last several years, as we've implemented these tools across 3 different engineering design challenge units that range from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. And each one of these design challenges has a focus on engineering for sustainable communities. And the first one focuses on interpersonal sustainability concerns. The second one focuses on classroom sustainability concerns. And the third one focuses on community sustainability concerns. And what I want to do is to zoom in on the second design challenge, how can I make my classroom more sustainable, in order to unpack and think with you about pedagogies of community ethnography. So I want to foreground, I'm sorry there's a lot of words on this one, but I want to foreground just a little bit about that design challenge so you have it as a context to understand the narratives that I'll share. And so over the course of 4 weeks, students investigate energy systems and transformations and green energy sources, along with what does it mean to think about our classroom as a sustainable community. And in the end, the design challenge during this unit was for students to use copper tape, LED lights, and renewable energy source, and anything else they could find in their classroom or school to design something that would promote classroom sustainability. And so what I want to do is to think a little bit about the possibilities and the challenges of designing for rightful presence through community ethnography pedagogies by delving into 2 cases from 2 different classrooms, both of which take place at Wilkerson School. And super briefly about Wilkerson School, it's a 4th through 6th grade school. We were working with 6th grade classrooms in Great Lake City, which is home to a local refugee center, as well as a multi-generational white and African American communities, and a recently growing Latinx community. So it's probably the most diverse school in all of Great Lake City. So to delve into this, I'm going to give you a quick snapshot of 2 different projects. The first is the Light Up Limbo Stick. And this was designed by 3 students who identified a lack of fun as the biggest classroom sustainability concern for everyone they surveyed. A lack of fun directly referenced power, positioning, and its connection to learning. And as group members noted, quote, when kids are not having fun, they get bored, they fall asleep, and they don't do their homework. Then they get bad grades and trapped into lower 7th grade classrooms. They also said students make their own fun when there isn't enough school-sanctioned fun. Then they would get in trouble and lose those opportunities for fun. So their solution was a Light Up Limbo Stick. Because their data, and I forgot to mention this, they had surveyed their own classroom, their peer 5th grade classroom, the adults in their school building, as well as family and neighborhood members through a survey that they co-constructed in class. And then they followed up that survey with some interviews. And so what they found in their data was that, quote, Everybody likes to limbo. They had never limboed in school. This was coming from the interviews. Quote, it was a suggested solution on the survey results. So they took that from the survey, got an idea, and then built interviews around that. And that kids only went to recess once a day at most, and they wanted to have some movement breaks. And so as you can see from this picture, the way they made their limbo stick was they put 16 LED lights affixed to one of the meter sticks in their classroom in a parallel circuit and powered it with a hand crank generator. And so if the video works, this is what Mackenzie said about her work on this design. And we can't hear her, so I'll read it to you. But we can see her talking. I think they'd be surprised because I'm younger and I made this and it really does work. So if they found out I made it, they'd be like, oh my gosh, because I made it in my group. It was actually pretty hard to do, so I think they'd be surprised. So she's very proud of this project. Okay, this is what their teacher said, Ms. K. She said, I was surprised with the survey findings. I did not fully realize the lack of fun in my classroom. As a teacher, I've got blinders on and I forget about that part. So we were able to have that discussion, and they wanted to do things in the classroom that would make it fun to be, recognized. Okay, second quick example is the Make a Friend board. And this was designed by two girls, one of whom is an immigrant and one of whom is not. And the Make a Friend board was a large, colorful board covered in blinking LED lights powered by a hand crank generator. And it contained welcoming notes and suggestions for how to make friends across cultural lines, written in the many languages of their school. And there were 21 languages spoken at their school. And the girls' reasons for making this Make a Friend board, which was made visible in their surveys and analysis, were that they wanted to address the problem of, quote, needing more of a sense of community. And this is our rationale. This is what they wrote on their paper. This is our rationale. Lots of bullying and gossip, lots of people being left out of groups in the classroom, and not enough chance to be recognized. As Valia says, we thought that it wasn't fair that a lot of kids are left out, and that ELLs are getting bullied and nobody talks to them because they can't speak English. We thought if we made this, people would start to make more friends. And this is what their teacher said. They surveyed the school and noticed the problem was getting to know people because we have a high population of immigrants and refugees. They wanted to reach out to form friendships. They took time to go to other classes and ask how to say friend in Arabic, Burmese, Swahili. Many times when we do challenging things, they just say, it's too hard and shut down. This, they never did. And so, what I want to do is to use these cases to suggest that community ethnography as pedagogy supports a more rightful presence in classroom learning because it expands the outcomes of learning in three ways. It opens up new discourse threads in the classroom, it supports the formation and use of hybrid forms of expertise, and it promotes social change making. So briefly, how does this work? Well, it's not just that ethnographic data brought students' lives into the classroom. It's how the students were supported in using these data to make their lives visible through and as public epistemic resources for students. So when students model their ethnographic survey data or their interview data through charts and graphs and bubble maps, it created spaces, like really visual, alive spaces for new discourse threads to emerge as they talked about what these representations meant. In the Make a Friend example, analyzing community data together promoted deeper dialogue, classroom dialogue on cross-cultural friendships and immigration politics in contemporary society. Ms. H later used that Make a Friend board to promote class and school awareness of immigrant students' experiences in staff meetings. Recall how the Limbo group used their data analysis to build a rationale for why they wanted to address the injustice of a lack of fun in school. Mrs. K and her students then began to discuss different theories about why they weren't having fun in their classroom, how a lack of fun made them feel, and whether or not having fun would help them to feel and be more welcomed in their classroom. She then worked with her classroom to create a social contract of when and how they might use that limbo stick to address those particular needs specifically. And so modeling the data invited deeper engagement with these hybrid forms of STEM expertise. The Make a Friend Board team had to engage in some really challenging modifications and consider design trade-offs as they conducted community interviews on how to make their project more effective. For example, they had to move from a series to a parallel circuit in order to get more lights because people said, no, you're going to get more attention on the sport. They decided to include information in more languages when they were learning that they weren't actually serving all the kids in their school. And they had to expand their suggestions on how to make friends to parents and teachers when they learned from an interview with a community member that the problem is not just among students. As Valia says at the end of this conversation, quote, "It would be good if parents come in and make friends with each other." My friend T, she came over and my mom was like, "I don't know her mom. I think that's a good idea because if we make it so that parents can meet, then maybe friends can come over," as in the new friends that they might be making.